Away from the missiles pounding Ukraine today, 10 people, including 5 children aged 3 to 5, have been killed in a fire earlier today that engulfed a residential building in an impoverished town near the southeastern French city of Lyon. Another 4 people were seriously injured in the blaze, which started around 3 in the morning on the ground floor before spreading up to 7-story buildings. To the 7-story building, according to authorities. The flames were later extinguished. Footage on social media showed a huge dark cloud billowing above the building early in the day. Other witnesses quoted by local media said a woman had tossed a child down to a crowd which had gathered outside and managed to catch him. She then jumped out of the window to escape the fire and smoke and fell to her death. The Lyon prosecutor's office opened an investigation to determine how the fire broke out and said it could not rule out any hypothesis, including arson. A couple behind a suspected ambush in rural Australia in which 2 police officers were killed appear to have posted a video during the attacks where they admitted to the killings. Queensland police said they were aware of the tape but did not confirm whether it showed Gareth and Stacey Train. A couple, along with Gareth's brother Nathaniel, were killed by police after shooting 2 officers and a neighbour. Police are looking into the trio's links to conspiracy theories. Officials say the suspects used many weapons but are yet to reveal what kind or any motive for the attack. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese on Thursday said it was a vicious and deadly ambush. A Queensland Police Union boss, Ian Levers, claimed the property was set up with a sophisticated surveillance system and a stockpile of guns and ammunition. Meanwhile, the charges against a U.S. pilot facing extradition from Australia are clearly political in nature, according to his Australian lawyer. Former U.S. Marine pilot Daniel Duggan, who was arrested in Australia, is accused of breaking U.S. arms control law by training Chinese military pilots to land on aircraft carriers, according to an indictment sealed at the court on Tuesday. Duggan faces 4 charges, including conspiracy to defraud the United States by conspiracy to unlawfully export defense services to China, conspiracy to launder money, and 2 counts of violating the Arms Export Control Act and international traffic in arms regulations.
Charges are by nature political. They're political in the sense that this is a piece of legislation that's intended to further America's standing geopolitically and its international relations. Because of that, the Extradition Act and the treaty between Australia and the US provide for an exception to extradition where the nature of the charges are political in nature. These charges clearly are political in nature, and that in and of itself would be sufficient in front of a hearing if the matter went that far to allow a magistrate to find Mr. Duggan ineligible for surrender. We always expected an extradition request to be made in this type of a case. However, it is important to note the following matters. We have directly written to the Attorney General and we have put him on notice, squarely and fairly, that in the event that he is to accept this extradition request, he will be bringing or risks bringing the administration of justice in Australia to disrepute. He's also risking a miscarriage of justice. In addition to that, the Inspector General of Intelligence has now engaged very intensely with Mr. Duggan at the very highest level. Those interactions have been very significant. They're ongoing. We ask all states to respect the independence of the investigation. We ask all states not to seek to interfere with the independence of that investigation. The Inspector General is separate from the Attorney General. They have a significant role to undertake to ensure that national security agencies abide by the law and that matters which touch on national security and which are classified can properly be investigated. In addition to that, we are also filing with the United Nations Human Rights Commission a complaint about Mr. Duggan's ongoing inhumane treatment in custody, including a lack of explanation as to why he continues to be refused medical treatment. A complaint about this has already been made to the court on a previous occasion. That complaint was repeated today. In addition to that, we are also concerned that up until now, Mr. Duggan's overall treatment has fallen well below the standards expected of Australia under international law.
And in the United States, President Joe Biden posed with African leaders for a family photo at the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit in Washington on Thursday. Earlier in the day, the U.S. president announced he would support the African Union joining the G20 group of large economies as a permanent member, part of Washington's efforts to reinvigorate ties with a region that has taken a back seat to other priorities in recent years. Biden, speaking at the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit event, said the United States is looking to increase collaboration in all areas. African leaders from 49 countries in the AU gathered this week in Washington for a 3-day summit that began on Tuesday with a focus on climate change, food security, trade partnerships, and other issues.
The challenges we face are both clear and they are urgent. That's why this year alone, the United States has committed nearly $11 billion in humanitarian and food security assistance to deal with food insecurity, including a dramatic surge on the Horn of Africa. And this afternoon, I'm announcing an additional $2 billion in humanitarian assistance. We're going to continue to ensure that the G7 and the G20 remain focused on food security. As I announced earlier today, we fully support the African Union joining the G20 as a permanent member.
When we come back after the break on News Track, we'll talk about those newly released JFK National Archives files that have been released from the National Archives in the United States. Join us again. Welcome back to the program. The U.S. National Archives on Thursday released thousands of documents related to the 1963 assassination of then President John F. Kennedy. Shortly after President Joe Biden issued an executive order authorizing the release that also kept hundreds of other sensitive records secret. A release of 12,879 documents was not expected to include any new bombshells or change the conclusion reached by the commission led by Chief Justice Earl Warren that Lee Harvey Oswald, a former Marine and communist activist who had lived in the Soviet Union, acted alone. However, the last cache will be useful for historians focusing on the events around the assassination. President Kennedy was shot and killed while riding in his motorcade through Dallas on November 22nd, 1963. He was just 46 years old. Thousands of books, articles, TV shows, and films have explored the idea that Kennedy's assassination was a result of an elaborate conspiracy. None, however, have produced conclusive proof that Oswald, who was fatally shot by nightclub owner Jack Ruby 2 days after killing Kennedy, worked with anyone else, although they retain a powerful cultural currency. Congress in 1992 had ordered that all remaining sealed files pertaining to the investigation into Kennedy's death should be fully open to the public through the National Archives in 25 years. And that will be by October 26th, 2017, except for those the president authorized for further withholding. In 2017, then President Donald Trump released a cache of records, but decided to release the remaining documents on a rolling basis. All of the remaining JFK files were originally supposed to have been released on October 2021. President Biden proposed that planned release, citing delays caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, and announced they would be instead disclosed in 2 batches, one on December 15, 2021, and another on December 15, 2022, after undergoing an intensive 1-year review. And with Thursday's release, 95% of the documents in the CIA's JFK assassination records will have been released in their entirety. A CIA spokesperson said no documents will remain redacted or withheld in full after an intensive 1-year review of all previously unreleased information. Let's bring in our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird. Maria, we understand why the documents have been released now, of course, because President Biden, who was supposed to release the last batch, released them in 2 batches, actually, one last year and then one again this year. But for those who are just learning about, the JFK case and who are just picking up interest in it, what can they learn from the new over 12,000 documents and files released?
Thank you. That's a very great question. I think that many people are asking, what are we going to learn now? It's been so many years since then. I think really is to see if there's anything that could lead to, as you mentioned earlier, that there was someone else. There's been many theories that Oswald did not act alone. If you look at, the way he was killed in Dallas, Texas, and if you look at kind of what was surrounding the government at this time and what was surrounding his administration at that time. And so when you look at the height of the civil rights, there's so many things happening in America, and we were in the midst of the war. And so I think that when you put all those factors together, the real question is, was this something that could have been a little bit deeper and a little bit more and even have any type of federal government implications with another branch of government having been involved in some of this?
So who does this serve in the end? I know that one of the purposes that has been released is for historians, but apart from them, who else would possibly have an interest in seriously and intently poring through these documents?
As you said, the Kennedy story has been one that has been recreated for many years. I mean, we have, even here recently, there have been several documentaries on the Kennedy case. And so I think that this is about faith in government. Will this be able to reinstill and reaffirm some individuals' faith in the government by the government releasing the rest of these files, potentially, possibly, and even generations of Americans that were not around when Kennedy were born are still impacted by the historical nature of the killing of JFK and the time period that it happened. So I think this is really about providing the transparency that our government says that they have, and making sure that Americans, if they said they were going to release it in a certain time frame, making sure that the government holds up to that. I think that's what President Biden and his administration are trying to do, or hold true to what was agreed upon, and to reinstill faith into the government. At this time, we're in a period of time where democracy was so much at stake over the last few years in the U.S., and I think anything that can be done to reaffirm the commitment the government has to the people, I think is what the government is going to try to do.
And is any member of the Kennedy family expected to react, to the release of the documents? Will they have anything to add or explain, as people pour through these files?
I think the Kennedy family will have to say something publicly, especially if there's any additional information that is found as a result of this, and this creates any additional investigation. I think they will, but I think they will have a general statement overall. But I think from their perspective, they've put this behind them. They've moved on as a family. And I think that this is really going to be about the American people, and not so much a statement that is going to be something to serve the family, but more so the family can provide some insight to the American people.
I mentioned history at the beginning, of this conversation, but, apart from, these documents being in the public spaces and making it to libraries and making it into the hands of historians, would it also impact school curriculum, especially as people, read back on American history and the presidents and all of that? Would it be reflected in school curriculum in the near future?
Yes, it probably will be if there's anything that comes out of it that is of any type of relevance.
Thank you, Maria. To other issues now. In recent years, conflict, insecurity, the effects of climate change have heavily contributed to the forced movement of people, whether within countries or across borders. Over 59 million people were internally displaced at the end of 2021. Regardless of the reasons that compel people to move, migrants and displaced people represent some of the most vulnerable and marginalized groups in society and are often exposed to abuse and exploitation. They have limited access to essential services, including healthcare, and are faced with xenophobic attacks and stigma fueled by misinformation. In addition, many migrant workers are often in temporary, informal, or unprotected jobs, which exposes them to a greater risk of insecurity, layoffs, and poor working conditions. Due to a persistent lack of safety and regular migration pathways, millions continue to take perilous journeys each year. Since 2014, more than 50,000 migrants have lost their lives on migratory routes across the world. Despite this, migrants have proven to be a source of prosperity, innovation, and sustainable development to countries of origin and transit. And in host countries, their financial contribution through remittances offers a lifeline to families and spur local markets, especially those of low and middle income countries. Their role in the labor market remains invaluable, as evidenced on the front line of the COVID-19 pandemic response. Their knowledge, network, and skills have greatly contributed to the development of resilient communities. Now, Sunday, December 18, is International Migrants Day. I have joining me now the Chief of Mission for the International Organization for Migration in Nigeria, Laurent Duberc. Thank you so much for being here.
Nice meeting you. Thank you.
And you've just arrived in the country, but you're coming from Egypt, where I would say with any African country, migration is a big issue. People are constantly leaving. People left in 2014 you you ask us not to use words like droves or in large numbers and so on, but a lot of people who left the continent and using these dangerous migratory routes. What is the situation now?
Unfortunately, this is continuing, despite the efforts made. Well, there is much more of interception, rescue at sea, but there is a need to continue increasing those methods of trying to prevent people to actually believe in traffickers and smugglers, but we see an increase because of the economic pressure on them. Despite the fact that smugglers, we know, have increased their prices, people are paying and getting in debt more and more for actually crossing borders irregularly or reaching another country, believing that it's where their life will be better.
And we see some of the videos, sometimes we come across them. For example, it was this week that about 4 migrants lost their lives on the English Channel trying to cross, from France all the way to England. And a lot of people are very desperate, about crossing, those harsh waters. And people are also confused about, what role the IOM really plays. So do you aid the migration or do you stall it?
Well, now we try to make the migration what we call orderly. It means that actually we promote migration as an important tool for development. So we work with governments, but we work also with the society. But we have to, it's very difficult balance to find, because by promoting migration as a positive element, people will believe that indeed it's the case, whatever way the journey would be. So we have also to balance and explain that it's true if it's well prepared, informed, and there are certain conditions to fulfill. So we are constantly in battles with those smugglers who are using these systems for saying, look, an organization is telling you that it's good you migrate because it will serve you, it will serve the country of origin, the country of destination, then just believe us and we will help you facilitating. Because we have to admit that it's not necessarily easy to migrate regularly or legally. There are a number of people who are willing to. It's not everybody who will be selected. Actually, countries are looking for certain skills. Not everybody. It's not that they can, or they fear that accepting some will result in a massive migration. And they have to also consider the situation of their electorate. They are not everybody, even if governments may understand they need people in the workforce, because some European countries, for example, are becoming older and older, so they need workers indeed, and they know. But they know that they can't actually take as much as they would wish, because their electorate might react negatively. And then unfortunately, the democratic process will play, and they may lose the next elections in favor of extreme right wing, so which will have a extremely negative effect on migration. So all this is a balance now, so to inform that the best way is indeed to be prepared. And that's the kind of program we put in place in Nigeria, for example, but in other countries, is to not only to inform, but also to make sure that we respond to the main reason, the cause for which those people are leaving.
Yeah, and the IOM has also been instrumental to helping some people who have migrated irregularly back to their home countries. The IOM in Nigeria has been, quite helpful, I would say, in bringing some people back. Even with, the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown restrictions and people having to return back to their countries, IOM did help some people return. You're also looking into helping people who are also being dehumanized and maltreated in the countries that they have been to. And then, with migration policies and these other countries saying, there's a lot of you here, we don't need so many people, and then they put them in migration camps and so on. Where is the IOM, when, these migrants become humanitarian crisis in the countries that they're heading to?
We intervene as well, and trying to actually defend and promote the human rights of all migrants. So that's part of our work with each of our governments. We have a council of member states, so they commit. Then, of course, we have to be present on the ground, and not only us, but also with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, for example, or NGOs, civil society, to promote the rights of migrants. We condemn, or we write to the government who are mistreating migrants or returning them forcibly. This is something we are pleading against. If return should be organized, it should be voluntarily. So the organization is involved in preparing the person, because returning might be considered as a failure, and for the dignity of the person, because there is a lot of hope on one individual by the family who has traveled. So the returning the person might be an humiliation for him or her, but also all the family circle. So we need to prepare that. That's what we are telling the governments, that we must ensure a return in dignity, because it will not serve the person who may be willing to leave immediately another way. So we are discussing. It's a dialogue. It's pressure to a certain extent to the governments in providing the right of the people to access the labor market. Okay, indeed, more and more governments are saying that if any attempt of entering their territory illegally will result in immediate deportation. I consider it as a preventive message on saying, please use the legal ways. I think it's a rhetoric message that they must say to please, but still exactly they go. So it's not enough. I think we need to really reinforce the response to the root causes, and that's why this year we also speak about a response involving all of the community. I think governments, whatever they do, they can't erect walls people will still pass. I think it's much more to be done at the society level. We have to talk with the communities, the families, and it's in every country. I think people are willing to welcome migrants, but some do not understand it, and there is so much of a hate discourse that some people may be influenced by. So they look at migrants as a danger. I think we have to work on this as well in the countries who need them.
Yeah, and I know that some of that fear, some of that xenophobia is rooted on, increasing crime rates and so on, and they tend to blame that, on migrant communities. I wanted to talk some more about Nigeria, because what I'm reading here, and I'm sure that the figures have changed, over 3 million people are suddenly displaced in Nigeria, 1.7 million largely unsettled returnees in the country. Could you expand some more on the situation here?
Now, those returnees are more those within the country. So because IOM is working on the people who have left the country, cross the border, but we also deal with the internal displacement, and that's the displacement caused mainly northeast, also in the north, because of the conflict situation or the tensions in the country. So we work there as well to develop the conducive conditions for them to consider return, and the return might be close to their places of origin. So that's more related to this specific situation of crisis. Also coupled to that, we have operations to provide assistance to those who have been displaced by the floods, the recent floods, and so also trying to rebuild better where they were coming from to allow them to return. In terms of return from outside the country, we are dealing now with 30,000 people so far for the last 5 years, and there we really try to have an individual support, and we do follow up at individual level. First for learning their experience, and also engaging them in passing a message. And I've met them recently. I was in Edo State, in Benin City. It's quite impressive what the people go through, the resilience. It's quite impressive, quite terrible, I would say. But they pass the message, and what I appreciated, I met different girls and boys, because they are generally quite young. And some were there and said, I didn't migrate, but I'm with them learning skills to understand how I can integrate my society, take my future in hand in Nigeria. But the woman, the young woman I met said, I intended to go. And it's by hearing them on the suffering they went through that I decided that it's worth staying here. Because the messages of them is far more powerful than whatever I can say or IOM can say. And then it's moving into considering their needs, their profile, their skills, soft skills, qualification, and developing that into how to integrate into the market. So it's job orientation, change the life of a lot. It was really, really nice to see hundreds of young people smiling, of being together and knowing that they will get a job, because the success rate of those we are working with, the civil society in Benin City, is fantastic. And that's really refreshing and encouraging to do more.
Yeah, and I know that IOM does a lot of work in Nigeria. I've had, the opportunity of seeing some of that work, and I've met some of the migrants who have returned and who are doing things. Some have established NGOs.
Absolutely.
Yes, some also have, causes that they're pursuing, their passions and so on. And they also want to be seen as a part of society. They want to be seen as human beings.
That's extremely important. It's not only economic, and you are totally right. It's a social recognition, the role they can play, and that's really, really beautiful to see. Yeah.
And with all of this work, I'm sure there are challenges working in a country like Nigeria. I know you haven't been here long, but the space of 1 month is enough to see what the problems are, right?
Well, I think the most important one is the quantity of people, because what we are doing indeed, it's unfortunately like just a part of the iceberg. So it's a model that we would like to replicate, and we are now discussing on actually how to enlarge the footprint, not ourselves, but to really engage with more multipliers. Private sector, I think, has a role to play. I think I want to involve them, make them accountable also to develop and I think it's in their interest anyway. They will have return in investment by proposing and involving the youth in creating this vibrant community of young people to doing business, self-business. So that's very important. But we have to look, the government is engaged. But alone they can't. It's too many. The government cannot create employment to the level of those yearly looking for jobs. We see, if I compare, indeed, because I visited Benin City, so I look at the numbers of people we support. We have had a lot of return to Edo State, but now there is a new trend, and we return people from Libya exclusively to Kano. It's totally new. It happened for the last 3 months. It's increasing. Sorry?
Is there a reason why they're being taken to Kano?
And that's what we are trying to understand. It's too short to understand. But we have had two charters arriving a week ago and yesterday. Our team are with the people and trying to understand why and how. We try to see whether, because the Edo State have been very engaged through the task force against irregular migration and trafficking in persons. And the society has been mobilized, so maybe it starts to have a result on those smugglers and traffickers understanding that the market, if I may say, is going lower. But I don't know whether it would explain that they have moved to Kano and the reason why. But it's the trend we have seen now. Most of the people who are currently in Libya abandoning and giving up or being intercepted are exclusively from Kano. So it's something we need to address now, and looking and understanding exactly how is this operated, because those migrants, those Nigerians coming back, they can identify those who have facilitated their transport. So with that information, we can dismantle the network easily and work with the prosecutors, with the law enforcement agency. I don't think it's that complicated. It's putting those people together, those who have the information and the prosecutors.
Are you getting enough cooperation with the prosecutors and the prosecution of these human smugglers?
We have absolutely excellent cooperation with NAPTIP, which is the national agency in charge, and all the other agencies. So that works perfectly well. So we have just to ensure that there is this link which is created at the level of the state. So that's what we will work on now.
So the day recognized by the United Nations is on December 18, but I imagine that there are, programs and plans you have until probably for the next 2 weeks or so, drawing attention to migration issues and migrant issues. Do you want to share some of those with us?
Yes, this year it's a campaign that we call I Am a Migrant, and actually our Director General and asked all of us to discuss with all our partners and governments on promoting migration positively, but recognizing as well the fact that majority of us, we have dreamt about a better future, and we may have considered migration. So it's not something that we can condemn. Then those who have done it, they may have gone through difficult time, and we want them to talk about it. So it's a testimony campaign. So I Am a Migrant is looking for people to say, yes, I am a migrant. It has been great, but I may have suffered. We have also worldwide an increase of people displaced forcibly we see climate change as impacting a lot. So we need them to talk and say, it's not my choice. I didn't want to. I would have loved to stay where I am with my family, but I have lost everything. So I am a migrant, but please bear with me. This is not what I wanted. I had no other choice than to leave. So it's just having people talking about the fact that it might be very positive. Some may highlight, and I've seen some testimony which is wonderful, speaking about solidarity during their journey, the assistance they receive, the welcoming also of some people who are very positive, because we always speak about migration as a negative discourse. Right, yeah. But there are also beauty in migration. There are people who are changing a community, bringing changes, new culture, new way of thinking. They have created jobs. There are a number of companies in North America which are actually led by migrants, and paying tax in the UK, also the millions of pounds paid yearly and job created. So this needs to be said.
Remittances, you forget to mention that.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, so that's what we want to call. So there is this campaign, I Am a Migrant, is calling anyone to speak about their experience, positive, but also those highlighting the fact that it's an extremely complex phenomenon.
Right. So I Am a Migrant is on social media, and you have programs, probably a seminar, a session or something, just to highlight that as well.
Yeah, no, we do call people to register or record and then post it on our website of the IOM, the global website of IOM, and then of course in Nigeria we do also contact and we'll share that with everybody.
Ron de Berg, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your discussing the issues, and we look forward to, highlighting issues of migration and migrants all over the world, even here in Nigeria.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
We have more coming up on The World Today. When we come back, an icy dip wearing body armor. That's all happening in Siberia. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching The World Today. Over in Malaysia, at least 21 people, including children, have been reportedly killed in a landslide that hit a holiday campsite in Selangor State. Hundreds of rescuers have been digging through the mud to find survivors.
The people died as they slept in their tents at the campsite. There were more than 90 people at the campsite, and more than 400 people from several agencies were deployed for the search and rescue effort. Search teams have been scouring thick mud and downed trees for more than 20 people still missing. More than 90 people were sleeping. The landslide occurred in Selangor State, bordering the capital Kuala Lumpur, at 3 a.m., tearing down a hillside into an organic farm with camping facilities.
Kita tengah buat sweeping.
Authorities say it came from an estimated height of 30 meters above the campsite and covered an area of about 1 acre. At least 59 people have been found dead. There were more than 20 primary school teachers and their family members at the site. Local Government Development Minister Nga Koming says the camping site had been operating illegally. He said he ordered all high-risk camping sites, those located along rivers, waterfalls and hillsides across Malaysia, to be immediately closed for 7 days. It's unclear what triggered the landslide. Local authorities reported some light rain, but no heavy downpours or any earthquakes in the lead up to it. However, monsoon season is currently underway in Malaysia.
As we're slowly winding down, a giant aquarium containing 1 million liters of water in the lobby of the Radisson Blu in Berlin has burst, flooding the hotel and nearby streets. The Aqua Dome, home to 1,500 tropical fish, is 15.85 meters high and was described as the largest freestanding cylindrical aquarium in the world. 2 people have been injured by falling glass after the blast. Police say they've had incredible damage, with videos showing an empty tank with water pouring into the hotel lobby. Outside the Radisson Blu, a pile of debris lies in front of what was once the front doors, which now hangs into the streets, twisted at an angle by the force of the exploding tank. And as we end the program, Siberian ice swimmers have taken the extreme contest to the next level, haven't they? By donning heavy body armor and carrying assault rifles as they face the icy waters. And this year, the competition, which took place in the city of 2 men in temperatures around 10 degrees Celsius, was joined by local military university students who swam 25 meters wearing combat equipment and assault rifles weighing over 20 kilograms. The winners will present their city at a regional ice swimming championship later in the winter. We're sorry we couldn't bring you the videos to that story. It would have been really interesting to watch the ice swimmers. But members of the British royal family attended a carol service at Westminster Abbey on Thursday. Prince Harry and his wife piled fresh criticism on the royal family in the new episode of the documentary, but that was not at play here. Prince and Princess of Wales' children, Prince George and Princess Charlotte, attended alongside their parents, William and Catherine, as well as King Charles III, the Queen Consort Camilla, and other members of the British royal family for an evening of Christmas carols, ushering in the Christmas season, as the British family again presented a united front despite the drama with Harry and Meghan. Oh, we couldn't participate in the carol service, but we do understand the recording will be broadcast on British TV on Christmas Eve. And that's the world today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Lubani.